Well, when you talk about an independent foreign policy, I mean, this is constitutionally mandated. No? Our constitution has a provision that says that we will pursue an independent foreign policy. No? In historical context, I mean, everybody knows that the Philippines has closely aligned its foreign policy with that of the United States. No? So we have generally supported Philippine engagements in, of course, security cooperation with not just with the Philippines, but its presence in the region. We remain a close economic partner of the U.S. with strong people-to-people ties. And that has been, I guess, a defining feature of our foreign policy, at least from independence, from 1946, from the formal political independence, at least up until the 1990s. So when we decided to close the bases and when we turned towards ASEAN as the other core or the pillar of our foreign policy. I think in the current setting, when President Duterte talks about an independent foreign policy, it just underscores the need to diversify partnerships, diversify our relations, not lean too much or depend too much on any single power, or more specifically, not depend on the United States. In part, it is the right direction. For various reasons. One is the U.S. itself is even, especially under Trump perhaps, has been in a way disengaging from our region. Its positions towards our issues like the South China Sea or the West Philippine Sea claims have not been strong in support or even explicit. In fact, the official position of the U.S. is they don't take sides in the sovereignty disputes. Whatever assistance we have obtained from the U.S. in recent years, or while our disputes with China were running high, have been very, I don't know if you would say minimal, but certainly not commensurate with the security challenges that the Philippines was facing. So the so-called move towards an independent foreign policy, I think, was also an assessment that perhaps it's not wise to rely solely on the U.S., and it's also not wise to have a very antagonistic or hostile attitude towards other powers, and particularly China, which is a rising power. So I think if the president had taken pains to explain or to articulate or to have the people understand better what his administration promotes as an independent foreign policy, that would have been far better than simply insulting President Obama or also EU leaders in what seems to be a very defensive reaction towards their own criticisms of his policies. The softer approach taken by the current president. During the Aquino administration, we were quite consistent in our pushback against China. So we went through the arbitration and we won, basically. We called on allies and partners, and there were some who supported. We looked towards ASEAN to help at least demonstrate some solidarity with the Philippines against China's assertiveness, which affected not just the Philippines but the region as a whole. And yet, if you look at the outcome, I mean, what did that kind of approach achieve for us, basically? Did it stop China from the island reclamation and the construction and the militarization? It did not. No? Did it cause China to leave Scarborough Shoal? Were we able to access the fisheries? We were able to because of the soft approach.
Yes.
Yeah, but during the period of hostility, confrontation, I mean, we could stand proud that we were pushing back against China's assertiveness. But were we becoming more secure? I mean, we were standing on principle, and the principle when we stood on the right side of history, upholding international law and pushing back against aggressive powers. But if you look at to what extent were we able to promote Philippine interests, specifically in relation to the disputed territories, access to resources, and constraining China's military activities and presence in the area, we couldn't say that we were effective. That approach was effective. So now, is this approach more effective in getting China to back down? It's difficult to say, but China has long been calling for bilateral negotiations. And now that the Duterte government has said, yes, we agree, this is the right track to take, then you can see how things have quieted down somewhat. Now, I wouldn't attribute it entirely to the softer approach of the Philippine government. I'm sure China has its own assessments and evaluation of how its own strategies and approaches should also be sensitive to external conditions. To be specific, you have a new U.S. government, which is where Trump has been disengaging, as he said. There's been a retreat from the Trans-Pacific Partnership, while Trump has indicated an active approach towards North Korea, and certainly the U.S. security establishment continues to work with other partners here in East and Southeast Asia. We really do not know yet what the Trump government will do in the South China Sea vis-a-vis China. So for China, it would make sense for them to dial down the tensions, meaning wait and see, wait for the Trump government to show its cards, so to speak. And the other thing is China also has embarked, under Xi Jinping, on this major foreign policy strategy, which they call the Belt and Road Initiative, or the One Belt, One Road. Now, they are investing so much money and political capital, social capital in this initiative, and this new program, which is to help China's economy, among other things, requires cooperation by other countries, especially in China's periphery. So those are also explanations for why we see China, quieting down a bit, not being as assertive or aggressive as in the past. So I wouldn't say that it is attributable to the Duterte's softer approach, but that may have contributed as well. And that's the real question. Why did he have to say that?
Yes.
It's not why did Xi Jinping warn the president, but why were these words coming from the president himself. No? I can only speculate because I wasn't party to the conversation. I don't know if things were lost in translation or if the president's memory of the statements were accurate. No? But it does seem out of sync with what I was saying, that China right now will not benefit from ratcheting up the tensions, no? But rather would like to tamp down. My guess, no, is perhaps as Secretary Cayetano explained, was something like, our president saying that we need to explore for oil, no? Because we're running short of supply and we intend to do this. No? And perhaps Xi Jinping on his part saying that, if that happens, then I will have to tell you that this might lead to war. No? This is not going to sit well. We will have to do something about it. No? So it in that hypothetical sense, no? That this is going to be an issue, no? If you push hard. No? Now, whether that was a message that whether that was the primary message that China was trying to communicate to the Filipino audience, I have my strong doubts. No? So maybe there's a context behind it. That's one explanation. As for why the president even mentioned this, no? If it was a private conversation and could have been handled confidentially, I think he wanted affirmation of his own position that he doesn't want to confront China. Other sectors of the Philippine public, former officials, are putting pressure on him. You have the arbitration, you're not doing anything about it. Instead, he has a very defeatist attitude towards China. We cannot get them out of those islands. We cannot really go to war with China. So I think he wanted affirmation that he is right. No? He cannot go to war, and precisely the Chinese are threatening war. No? But if that's the case, then he was speaking to a domestic audience, and maybe I suspect misrepresenting the position of Xi Jinping at that time. No? And I say that not because I know Xi Jinping's thinking or what, no? But because it was inconsistent with the main thrust of China's foreign policy now, which includes the Belt and Road Initiative. No? That's the thing. The disputes over the islands and the waters are not bilateral disputes. But China has insisted that we discuss this bilaterally. So, and Duterte says, okay, let's talk about it bilaterally. I think it will become clearer at some point that, as you said, there may be some points of agreement that other countries will not comply with, not abide by, or may even contest. So we cannot go into that level of detail in the bilateral talks. So I suspect that the main purpose now for the bilaterals is to create a more positive atmosphere, rebuild some of the confidence, so that both sides will be persuaded to take a diplomatic, political, diplomatic settlement as the approach. No? What China doesn't want is for the Philippines to keep filing cases, no? To be very legalistic about it. No? What the Philippines doesn't want is for China to keep threatening the Philippines militarily, or even with its coast guard, or even with its large numbers of fishing boats. No? So both sides stand to benefit from the bilateral consultations. but both sides know that it's not going to solve all of the problems. The other thing is we're only talking about the maritime entitlements of the Philippines. That was what the arbitration was all about. It wasn't about solving the sovereignty disputes. So definitely it will have limited, and that was a legal question. If you insist on handling it as a legal issue, the rights of the Philippines, then its effect will be limited to that. Will it result in peace and stability in the South China Sea? No. Will it bring security for all countries concerned? No. So the question of stability, security will have to be addressed multilaterally. So that's
which
where
China does not want to do.
I think in a sense, if you observe China's position, it has also been adjusting. No? China says it wants bilateral negotiations with the countries directly concerned, no? On the sovereignty issue. But China has also been saying that it can take a dual track, so-called dual track approach towards in ASEAN, no? Where if you talk about sovereignty, you do it bilaterally. But if you talk about the peace and stability, how to promote this in China, Southeast Asia relations, or in the South China Sea, then it is open to multilateral discussions. And since 1996, China has been discussing this issue multilaterally with ASEAN. No? So it's not as if it were really, a black or white approach. It's been doing both. No?
Okay.
Yeah.